Wedding planners of Reddit, what's your horror story? Obligatory, not a planner, but my mom made wedding cakes for almost 20 years in the 1990s 2000s. Several of her horror stories involved precious moments figurines, of all things. They're the ones that look like creepy babies / angelic children. For some ungodly reason, precious moments cake toppers were all the rage for a while. Unfortunately, they are made of ceramic and can be a bit heavy to place on top of stacked pastry. One time, mom was mid-cake setup when the mother of the bride, MOB, handed her a £5 Precious Moments wedding car and told her it was their cake topper. Besides being heavy, it was also larger than the top tier of the cake. My mom flat out told her, no way. That thing is way too heavy, it will crush atop the cake. MOB didn't want to take no for an answer and kept insisting that the wedding would be ruined if they didn't have this cake topper. Mom refused and explained several more times that the cake could not support the car. She placed the car next to the cake and got a pretty spray of flowers from the florist to put on top instead. An hour later, she got a frantic call from the reception hall because the cake fell all by itself. Turns out, MOB waited until mom left, placed the car topper on top of the cake, and left for the ceremony. The reception manager found the cake all over the floor shortly after. A similar scenario occurred with a motorcycle-themed Precious Moments figurine several months later. Mom banned all Precious Moments after that. I had a couple and her mother come to see me by appointment to plan wedding music for their forthcoming church ceremony. Each time I'd demonstrate a potential processional on the organ, the bride and groom liked it, but the bride's mother objected and asked to hear something different. When asked what her idea of something different might be, she had no ideas. The situation got more and more tense as the groom and bride's mother argued. Finally, the mother said, listen, I'm paying for this wedding, and you'll do it my way, and that's the end of it. In an effort to bring harmony, I said to the mother, it's the couple's wedding, not yours or mine. Let them make the choices they like, and I'll provide music at no charge, so the question of who's paying for it is no longer a factor. That solved the problem instantly. But the groom left glaring at his future mother-in-law, probably wondering what he was getting into for the long term. To my surprise, the best man came to see me at the organ on the day of the ceremony and gave me an envelope containing double the normal amount. Good guy groom. Not a wedding planner, but was directly involved. A few years ago my sister got married. The wedding was in a small town up north and the church was old and small but beautiful. Of course she asked my brother and I to usher the wedding. Wedding day comes, everything is great, everyone is seated in the church. We close the outside doors to prepare for my sister to walk in. The wedding planners are standing outside with us doing a final check. Everything appears to be okay, except no one knows where the priest is. He is nowhere in any part of this small church. My sister comes out and calls the priest, who as it turns out, thought the wedding was actually an hour later than it really was. So he started speeding towards the church. In the meantime, the harpist that was playing keeps playing and everyone inside is getting a bit antsy. Then we realized that, while we were figuring this whole thing out, no one bothered to clue in my soon-to-be brother-in-law, who was just standing alone at the altar. After this event the planners added, check that the priest is there, to the list. Dude, every item on that list was a result of experience. Not a planner, sorry, but a witness. My cousin's wedding. Everyone is there and has a role. I'm a scripture reader. My little sister and cousin are in charge of handing out the programs. Cool, right? Until the wedding planner runs up to the girls minutes before the guests arrived and ripped the programs out of their hands, chastising them for not standing outside to greet the guests. It was 98 degrees outside, a mild spring day for Texas. The bride had to come away from photos to tell her own wedding planner to frick off and leave the church for making the girls cry. We later found out that the planner was only there at the mother of the bride's insistence, and the bride just planned everything herself, while her mom and the planner would get drunk at brunch planning the wedding. The girls were fun and the wedding went off without a hitch. That actually sounds like a good tactic for keeping the mother out of wedding planning though. Set her up with a wedding planner to plan things, and then ignore them, and plan everything separately. That plan relies on the planner being in on the plan, and not a jerk though. Still, if those criteria are met, it could work pretty well. Wedding coordinator here, the couple that never paid their final balance for the reception. I'm a day of event coordinator, so I'm not part of the arrangements, only handle the details to make sure everything goes smoothly. This was one of the rare times it didn't. Once the ceremony started, I headed over to the reception hall to oversee the setup, only to find out that the couple paid the deposit, but never paid the balance. About half of the total cost, if I recall, about $30,000. The catering hall was refusing to hold the reception until they got their money in cash, no personal checks allowed. It was a Sunday before a bank holiday, and while most commercial banks would have been fine, their local bank was not open until that Tuesday. Slightly panicking, I called the main coordinator, who was still at the church with the couple, to try to figure this out. The older brother tried to help by trying to get money from relatives, but they were obviously short of the sum needed. We were at the point where guests were starting to arrive. After going back and forth, the catering manager said they would hold the cocktail hour, since the deposit covered that. When the couple arrived, the groom, the brother, and my lead coordinator met with the manager, and they basically offered their money box, along with whatever payment they were able to round up to hold as ransom, until they made the payment. The reception went on as planned, and once everything was set, I broke my work rule and had a strong drink. But did they end up paying in full? They went back on Tuesday with the full payment. Not a wedding planner, but this a funny/tragic story. My mother's friend is a florist, and she makes the flower arrangements for a lot of weddings. Anyway, for this wedding, the bride wanted flowers on the chairs. Not very smart, because they would eventually get crushed and or ruin someone's clothes. And each chair with flowers costs about €75, and there are about 300 to 400 guests. Plus, there are all the other flowers arrangements for the tables and around the venue, so the bride's mother spent about €20,000 on flowers alone. I can't even imagine how much the whole thing cost. Anyway, the wedding day went by uneventful until the bride and groom were at their honeymoon. The bride received a call from her ex-boyfriend. They made up, and she left her husband and went to live with her ex. Apparently, the mother had a nervous breakdown. The frick? What kind of asinine logic went through the bride's head? I know, right? Who the hell puts flowers on chairs? Ridiculous. Sounds like there wasn't much of anything in the bride's head. Not a coordinator, but a tale about a coordinator. Bride and groom decided to get married in an old boutique hotel/theater. The building is a 3-story affair. Ballroom on the first floor, rooms on the second, and a theater on the third. The coordinator had failed so hard on the wedding from the very beginning. As guests arrived for the event, no one had a clue of where to go. There were no signs leading the way to the theater, so the guests gathered on the second floor instead. The problem with this was, that is where the wedding party was getting ready. The bride and groom were constantly being barged in on from every single guest trying to find a seat. The wedding was set for 3 p.m. The coordinator had the audacity to hold the wedding party back until 3:45 to account for stragglers and to be fashionably late. Being in an old 1800s building, let's just say the lighting isn't the greatest. I think a candle would have put out more shadows than the lights in the room. This was compounded by the only windows in this theater were on the south-facing side of the building, which was where the audience was facing. You literally could not see the wedding party because the coordinator delayed the ceremony for so long. The daily 4 p.m. train came whistling through as the couple were saying their vows. Honey, when we first met I thought, zoosh zoosh zoowash ding ding ding. My sister just got married, and it was a beautiful wedding. They wanted a tiny, personal wedding, so everything was relatively easy to plan and set up. My parents had a large and nice looking backyard/green belt that they used, etc. Everything went perfectly until we were forcefully reminded that every Saturday at noon the tornado sirens were tested. All of us just looked at each other, laughing and thinking, oh yeah, I should have thought of that, for a few minutes. This happened at a wedding reception that took place where I used to work. Bride and groom were fighting when they arrived for the reception. Groom starts chugging back wine and passed out before he could make a speech and had to be carried out by his groomsmen. So that's what groomsmen are for. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing for more videos like this. Don't forget to leave your stories in the comments below.